Today we're taking a look at Universal Design for Learning here on Inside CPS. I'm Anne-Marie Fiore, Director of Technology and Information for the Chelmsford Public Schools.
And I'm Frank Tiano, Superintendent of Schools here in Chelmsford.
And joining us on the show today is Dr. Kristen Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez is our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and she's been with the school district since July 2011. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you.
Kristen, the topic for today is Universal Design for Learning. People who've watched school committee have heard about this, but we're hoping that you could just give us an overall view of what Universal Design for Learning is.
Sure. Universal Design for Learning is a set of principles that is aimed at providing access for all of our students to our curriculum and our instructional resources. It's based on neuroscience and, in particular, 3 networks within the brain. There is the recognition network, there is the strategic network, and there is the affective network. In regard to the recognition network, it's really about gathering facts and about classifying those facts in terms of categorizing what we read, see, and hear. In terms of the strategic network, it's really about how we are planning and performing our tasks. In regards to the affective network, it's really about motivation and engagement of our students.
It seems pretty complicated. What does that look like for our teachers and our kids in the classroom?
So when we're paying attention to all of these networks, when we're designing our lessons and our assessments, we're really looking at thinking of classifying those 3 networks. So when we plan our instruction in response to the recognition network, it's really about how are we providing content in myriad ways to our students so that they can access that content. When we look at the strategic network, it's differentiating the ways in which they can demonstrate their understanding. And when we're thinking about the affective network, it's really about how do we make sure that we're thinking and planning for engaging activities and ways that we can continue to motivate our students in their own learning.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. So one of the things that we've been doing in coordination, the curriculum office and the technology office, is looking at technology as a tool to engage our students, to motivate our students, and provide different access points to both how we teach the curriculum as well as how we assess the curriculum.
When teachers take the Universal Design for Learn course, they receive what we call in Chelmsford a 21st century classroom setup. That consists of an interactive whiteboard, a mounted LCD projector, as well as mounted speakers, and that kind of gives them in their teaching a little edge on using the Universal Design for Learning principles. You're going to be seeing that coming up in a video clip in a few minutes.
For the remainder of the show, again, we're going to stay with the topic for Universal Design for Learning. With us today, we have 3 teachers. We have Susan McKinnon, a first grade teacher at the center school, and she'll be joined by Katie Novak, a teacher right here at the Parker Middle School where our studios are held. And then from the high school, in our second segment, we'll have Jim Alward, and he'll be bringing along 2 students with him to talk UDL.
We're going now to a clip of Susan and Katie teaching in their respective classrooms using some UDL technologies. Right after that, we'll be talking about Universal Design for Learning. On September 11th, Inside CPS visited Susan McKinnon's first grade class at the center school. She was getting ready to teach a class on shapes and patterns using the Eno board. But first, the students performed the XYZ song.
Now I know my ZY X's. Next time we should go to Texas. Yeah! Remember the other day we were talking about shapes? Wait a minute. How do you know the difference between a square and a rectangle?
If you make this, if that square is actually supposed to be bigger, and the square and the rectangle is actually longer.
Many of the students in Ms. McKinnon's class are given the opportunity to work with the Eno board, creating shapes and patterns.
You can use any shapes you want, Zebra. Like A, B, A, B, A, B patterns. I wonder what this would be. A, B,
C.
C.
Yeah, I remember that. I will see it again.
On September 12th, Inside CPS visited Katie Novak, 7th grade class, where she utilized document camera as well as Eno board technologies as a part of her English language arts class.
When we're doing a graphic organizer for an open response, we want to remember our burger highlighting code. Okay, see here, tell me what is wrong with this burger and remain. Nick.
There's no beef.
There's no beef. So here's me thinking about the yellow topic sentence and the concluding sentence. And what does the yellow symbolize on my burger? Then I'm going to project them, and we're going to have people come up and critique the burgers.
The students worked to create their burger highlighting codes. Ms. Novak then projected them on her interactive whiteboard using her classroom document camera. Joining us on the set are Dr. Katie Novak and Susan McKinnon. Katie Novak is a 7th grade teacher at the Parker School, and she's also a UDL coach for the district. Susan McKinnon is a 1st grade teacher at the Center School. Susan, how often do you use your Eno board and your projector in your classroom?
The more I use it, the more I get comfortable with it and use it again. So at first I didn't use it a lot, but I use it for a lot of lessons now. In the video clip that you saw there, that was one of the times that I had just used it almost on the spur of the moment. So I'm getting very comfortable with it, and I can just pull it out when the lesson calls for something like that.
So Susan, what other technology equipment do you use in your classroom, and how have you used it with the principals of UDL?
Well, in addition to the Eno board, I have iPads in the classroom, which is great, that I needed some to be for ebook readers. I wanted to use that instead of tapes and things. So the kids have become very comfortable with using the ebooks so that they have an interactive book where they can turn the pages like a traditional book, but the book will read the text aloud to them as it highlights them. But I've also started to use the iPad for other issues in the classroom. I have a girl right now who has very poor fine motor skills, really can't do paper and pencil tasks. So now she can use the iPad for that. I actually have a finger writing program on the iPad so that she can do the same work that everyone else is doing, but she just has a different means of expression.
That's great.
Now I know using this technology, it feeds into the planning for lessons. How might you plan the lessons that don't use the technology?
I think it matters. You just have to think about what your objectives are for the lesson and not be so intent on this being a paper and pencil task, but really look into what is it that you want the students to know and how do you want them to show it, or what is it you want them to show. So then you can be more open to different means of presentation to them and also different ways for them to give you the work back. For instance, that girl can do her spelling test. She doesn't have to take a paper and pencil. She can show us on the iPad using that. Or even without technology, she could use magnets or something. It won't really matter. You have to make sure the goal isn't that they will write 10 words. It's more that they'll demonstrate they know how to spell 10 words.
Right.
You have to be careful how you present your goals.
And have you had any challenges, Susan, using UDL?
I have. The first year I did it, the challenge was that 2 of the students who were in my regular 1st grade class were extremely delayed in terms of what the curriculum presented, and then it was very hard to include them in the lesson where there was a very wide gap in their knowledge. We tried doing that as a co-teaching model, but for some students their delays are too far behind. So that's a challenge. And then the other challenge is that in 1st grade we're really teaching basic skills. If you're teaching a content class, you can change the means of presentation. If you want someone to learn about history, they don't have to read a textbook. But I'm trying to teach children how to read. So it's a little bit difficult to plan lessons for children who don't have great access with paper and pencil and with books, when what you're trying to do is teach them to read books.
Right.
So I think we have to just start to learn to change our thinking about that.
That's great.
So Katie, we have a few questions for you as well. Can you help us understand what UDL is by providing us with an analogy about how UDL might be different from traditional lessons?
I can. So first, I brought a little apron here as a prop if one of you would like to be the host of our dinner party. So here you go.
I
Don't
think that'll
fight
be
over
Anne-Marie.
it. Anne-Marie is going to host a dinner party
You
here.
go.
And so we're really excited to go to a dinner party at Anne-Marie's house. We have some plates, glasses for sparkling water, of course. And we're going to have this amazing dinner party. And here's the thing, is all of us kind of have a signature dish when we go to a party. So if we throw a party, I'm the Mexican lasagna girl. You know, it's just my thing. So teachers, we kind of have our traditional way of teaching. And you invite everyone to the party. So anyone have a signature dish here? Lasagna.
Mexican layer dip.
Oh, sounds delicious.
Spinach bread.
Spinach bread, got it. So you're making a party, right? So this is how we think as teachers. We're like, all right, I have this lesson, I love it. Everybody must love Mexican lasagna. So everyone starts coming into your party, and all of a sudden Victoria is a vegetarian, and Debbie's on Weight Watchers, and you have someone with celiacs, and you have somebody who is lactose intolerant, and then it's like, now no one can eat this. That's what a traditional lesson is. It's like planning a dinner party without really knowing your guests. If you throw a lot of dinner parties, like I throw 4 a day, you have to keep in mind that you have to create a menu from the start that everyone can eat. So when you're planning a menu, you go, okay, what can I make that doesn't have lactose? And if you research it, Parmesan cheese actually does not. That's an interesting tip.
That's a nice tip.
And you can find something that doesn't have any gluten in it. There's a lot of gluten-free options. And basically, you're creating a meal that regardless of who walks in your door, everyone can eat it. And that's where you're taking a step away from traditional education, because you're looking at it, you have to go back and plan from the very beginning. So your kid that needs like the highest level of challenge and your kid who needs the highest level of accommodations can both enjoy that meal.
So we're talking about UDL. UDL seems to be all about removing barriers. What types of barriers do you see in the classroom that UDL helps overcome?
I mean, some are just so little. Like traditionally when we were in school, you had to hand in a paper and it had to have 1-inch margins, blue pen, in cursive. And you have to ask yourself, as Susan said, does it really matter if a kid uses purple sparkly pen? Does it really matter if it's printed? If I need to make sure somebody can respond to something, some of those barriers are just routines that we were taught. And it's like you want to stick to them so badly, but it's just by taking away those requirements. Sure, you can print, you can do cursive, you can type. I don't care what color pen you use. I don't care what size the paper is. I just want you to learn how to respond to this text. Then you're taking away a lot of what was there before. Also, you don't ever want a kid to kind of start off with an assignment and have no idea where to go. So you have to provide a lot of coping strategies. So modeling, having examples, having a list on the bottom, if you get to one you don't know, follow these steps. And just kind of taking away all those little tiny things that prevent kids from doing work.
Katie, what are some of the other benefits of UDL? You've given us quite a few.
I mean, huge ones, student achievement. I mean, that's what, when it comes down to it, kids need to learn, they need to prove they've learned something. And I mean, the numbers are there. If you look at the data, the more you do UDL, the better your kids do in school. You're giving kids access to things that they previously did not have access to. And they were just as smart as everyone else. Everyone's equally smart in different ways. So it's how do you kind of tap that so you can equalize the playing field, and maybe somebody can write an essay better than another person, but their understanding of it should be the same.
So with all of these benefits for teachers, why are not all teachers implementing UDL into their curriculum?
Because you have to scrap everything you've ever known and start over. And that's what's really hard, is you can't use what you were using before. You can't, I teach 7th grade English, there was a lot of novels. When I taught novels, the teacher gave us the novel, you read it silently, you wrote about it silently, and that was it. And UDL is a lot of collaboration, a lot of group work. If you walked by my room and you were not trained in UDL, you would be horrified probably. There's a lot of noise, people are out of their seats, but that's what UDL is allowing them to utilize each other, get up and use manipulatives, get up on the smart board and kind of play around. It should be enjoyable to learn. I don't know where we lost that somehow, that, kindergarten, 1st grade, it's fun, and then it's like, oh, you're in junior high and high school, it's not fun anymore. But it can be if teachers kind of remove everything they thought about education and start over. Start with a brand new menu, start looking through new recipes, and then say, you know what, I think I can make this also.
Kate, do you have any examples of student work from a UDL lesson?
I actually do. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
And so one of the things that's really important in language arts is the plot structure. Starting from probably 3rd or 4th grade up until, throughout college, the fancy word is Freytag's pyramid, but they basically need to know a couple different points of the plot: exposition, rising action. And so instead of having them write about it or take a test on it, I told them to go home and create me a plot structure. I wouldn't give them any ideas about how to do it. I'm like, I want to be wowed. And so, some students chose to draw their plot structure out. This one probably took 15 years, spelling all the words out in different beads. This student, he was it literally took me an hour. The tower kept falling over. Going home and making s'mores. This is one of my personal favorites, the garden variety.
Sure.
But when you're getting a bunch of these, what happens is the students are going home, they're excited about it, they're all around the classroom, and then if there's a test on the MCAS in 3 months about the plot curve, they're like, oh yeah, resolution, that's the bottom caret. And it's just giving them a different way to look at something, and they love it. Like, this is the same exact assignment as the old school one where you diagram the plot, but they just had fun doing it.
Susan and Katie, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're going to go to a short clip of James Alward teaching geometry at Chelmsford High School. And after that, we'll be right back with Mr. Alward and 2 students from Chelmsford High School. On September 18th, Inside CPS visited James Alward at Chelmsford High School. James was teaching a lesson on geometry using an interactive whiteboard. As James was writing the lesson on the interactive whiteboard, the lesson was replicated on his teacher computer, allowing James to print the lesson notes for his students at the end of class.
The 2 smaller angles equal the larger angle, right?
As a UDL teacher, James works closely with technology staff and demonstrates the UDL technologies for other teachers at Chelmsford High School.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Inside CPS. This is the show where we're talking about universal design for learning. Here in our second segment, we have Jim Elward. He's a teacher here at Chelmsford High School. And with him, he has 2 students, both juniors, Megan Bartleman and Michael Fahey. Kids, welcome to the show. Mr. Elward, we're going to start with a question with you first. From your perspective at the high school, what are the main components of UDL?
The main components of UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, are flexible methods of presentation, flexible methods of engagement, and flexible methods of reflection.
Great.
Jim, tell us how UDL helps you maintain high standards and goals for every learner.
Well, UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, supports the idea or belief that all students can become proficient learners in standards-based curriculum, and they feel that this is accomplished when everything has been scrapped, and the teachers can then figure out all the different learning styles that are in the classroom and then present those lessons in those curriculum in that way.
Okay.
So if you could talk to us a little bit about how technology has helped you in implementing the principles of UDL.
Being able to implement the principles of UDL, the technology has been very crucial, especially at the high school. We have the Eno boards, we have the Cuomo pads, and being able to have access to those tools, the students are then being able to be engaged in the lesson. They're able to see the different visuals, we're able to do 3D models, be able to print notes, have access to all the notes, homework assignments on the web. Parents can download those if they have questions, so it does help.
That sounds great. Now, in your opinion, what principle of UDL mostly benefits kids?
From my perspective, the one that benefits the kids the most has been the guided notes that we do in class, especially when it comes to the area of math, especially if there is a lot of diagrams and the students need to be copying those down. We'll be able to put those up on the Eno board. We'll give the students a copy, and then they're just filling in basic things so that they can actually pay attention when we're giving the lesson, and then they can just write down the basic things that they need to know, and then we post it online for those students if they need to download it later on.
That's great.
Can you describe for us a barrier that has been reduced through Universal Design for Learning?
One of the barriers that has been reduced with UDL is being able to have the students engaged in the lessons. Last year we used remote controls for students to participate in class, and we set it up in such a way that it gave us a chance to see all the students participating, and they didn't have to raise their hand, they didn't have to feel like they were being singled out, and when we showed the results in class, it was just based on percentages, so none of the students' names were present, so it was just able to see if we had multiple choice how many people answered A, and then we could go in and then restructure the questions and guide them through the process.
That's great.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael, for joining us. So can you give us an example of how the principles of UDL or technology have helped you access the curriculum, let's say geometry, for example?
just having everything color coded is a lot easier. Looking at different shapes, you can see them in 3D, and just being able to access information online.
That's great. And Megan, we have a question for you. Now, in geometry, how do teachers test your knowledge of subject matter other than using quizzes and tests?
Well, we were allowed to do different projects that showed that we understand what we were learning. Like, for example, we did a project with using houses, and we got to use different shapes to build, like, the front of a house.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that does sound like fun. I'd like to thank the three of you for being on the show today. Michael, Megan, and Jim, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for today. If you would like more information on the Chelmsford Public Schools, please visit our website at www.chelmsford.k12.ma.us.
And before we sign off, I'd like to tell you about some exciting news regarding Inside CPS. Our next show will be taped live for the first time, and that'll be at the Chelmsford High Andover football game. That'll be October 26th at Simonian Stadium. Also, too, we actually will have our first spin-off from Inside CPS. Dr. Matthew Bay-Ronavan, he's our department coordinator for math, grades K through 12, and he will have his own show starting, is it next month?
Starting in November.
Starting in November, and that show will be called Math with Matthew. So we hope you tune in to that show as well, as long as being a loyal viewer here on Inside CPS. Folks, thanks so much. We actually have a promo before we go regarding Math with Matthew. Everybody have a great month of October.